Anyway, sixth the Mami and the monkey. Listen, fair madam, let it be your glory to see her tears, but be your heart to them as unrelenting flint to drops of rain. Titus Andronicus, Act 2, Scene 3. You back on the pipe, Kick? No, I'm not back on the pipe, Kristin Kicky McGee snapped back. I'm clean as a whistle, and I've been clean for 6 months now. She glared at Lenny Gillis, the man sitting across from her in the booth. They were in Gillis's place of business, a rundown bar-cum-strip joint on 82nd Avenue in Portland, called Jupiter's Den. The dive wasn't open for business yet. The bartender was diddling with the settings on the stage stereo speakers, and their conversation was punctuated with the rising and falling blare of indie rock and mindless thumping drum music, while the day manager tested the dancers' poles and adjusted the footlights. "So why are you coming to me wanting dates again?" demanded Gillis. He was a small and scrawny individual, methamphetamine lean, with lank dark hair and a football mustache, 11 hairs on each side. He wore a torn dark t-shirt and had a baseball cap stuck backwards onto his prematurely balding head. "Because I need the damned money. Why do you think?" demanded Kicky. She was a deceptively small and soft-looking girl with hazel eyes and honey blonde hair down to her shoulder blades. It wasn't until someone looked into her face that they saw she was a hard 24 years old going on a harder 100 or so, her green eyes devoid of anything soft or feminine. She was wearing a halter top that showed off several tattoos, the obligatory barbed wire design around her left bicep, a strawberry with a bite taken out of it on the upper, curvature of her left breast, a wild-haired Scottish kelpie or water sprite on her right shoulder, and an ancient Irish filigree design from the Book of Kells on her back. Between her right thumb and forefinger was a crude hand-inked tattoo, a circled X that, for those in the know, warned off women's prison lesbians with the promise of a violent reaction if they tried it on. They cut off my social services check because they caught me driving the cab. I don't know who ratted me out, probably that Hindu or whatever the hell he is in that turban, the new dispatcher. He promised me all the airport trips from Lake Oswego and the Pearl if I'd come in early each shift and suck him off in the can. I told him to go fuck himself, and next afternoon I come in, and there's that Jew bitch from social sitting in the damned office. "He thought you were a whore." "Geez, I wonder where he got that impression," said Lenny with airy sarcasm. "And why should I give you any dates, after the shitty way you walked out on me last time?" Lenny touched his head. There was still scar tissue beneath the hair where Kicky had cracked a beer bottle over his skull on her last departure from his establishment. "Because I make you money," said Kicky. "I don't want to work the streets. It's too damn dangerous with all these spuckies out there shooting people." "Hey, as I recall, you're still white under all those tats," laughed Gillis. "Spuckies only shoot our darker brethren." "Yeah, and they got every spick and nigger and Laotian gangbanger in Portland so pissed off they want to retaliate on some white working girl they pick up on Sandy Boulevard and take off somewhere nice and private to play Friday the 13th with," replied Kicky in exasperation. "It's happened to some of the street girls. Use your head, Lenny. I don't want to go on the street. I need you to screen my tricks for me. Same arrangement as before. No spooks or spics or ching-ling-dings or other women. Just my old regulars to begin with. You know that even when I was on the pipe I was reliable, and I never tried to hold out on your cut. I'm an earner. If you're still sore about my clocking you with that bottle, you shouldn't have sprung that multiracial threesome on me without asking, because you knew I would have said no." "Yeah, well, I guess I shouldn't have called the cops on you. That wasn't like playing the game," muttered Lenny. "Then again, maybe if I wanted to jam you up I should have turned you in for hate crime. I know you don't like dark meat, but that's prejudice. Even in a whore—" "The term is sex trade worker, thank you," said Kicky primly. "And it's not prejudice, it's a preference. Being a sex trade worker, I am in a politically protected category, sort of anyway, and I'm allowed to have preferences. Remember, no means no, even for hookers." "So why come to me?" asked Lenny. "Okay, so they cut your social services off. Big deal. You can still drive the cab, can't you? And if you don't mind sex trade working as you call it, you can pick up some extra green by blowing a customer or two in the back seat." "I'm still driving the cab, yes," said Kicky. "But Singh is going to be on my case for not polishing his knob, waiting for me to put a foot wrong. He's going to find some reason to fire me. If I started doing my fares he'd find out, and that would be his excuse." I want to keep the two jobs separate." "Why the need for money, if you're not back on the crack?" asked Lenny suspiciously. Kicky sighed. "The bastards are trying to take Ellie away from me," she explained wearily. "That's another reason they cut off my social, to pressure me. They don't give a flying fuck if Ellie starves or goes without shoes. They're trying to make me sell her to It Takes a Village, but I won't do it. So now they're cutting me off and building a file on me as a bad mother so they can take her away from me, kick in the door of my trailer one morning at daylight and drag her away, like they do. I need a lot of money fast. I need to build up a stake and get the hell out of Oregon where Child Protective can't find us. Maybe up to Seattle or Montana someplace. I was in Missoula once. I liked it up there. Big sky country. Why don't you just sell your superfluous byproduct and be done with it?" asked Lenny. "Jesus, a little blonde girl like her? You could get a couple $100,000 for her easy, maybe more, and you don't even have to cut It Takes a Village in on the action. It's called a private adoption bond. I can set you up with this Jew lawyer I know, Feigenbaum. It's legal as hell, and you'd have enough cash to go anywhere you want, do anything you want." "And what would be your cut?" demanded Kicky acidly. Lenny shrugged. "Don't worry about it. I'll take it off Feigenbaum's end. How about it?" "No," said Kicky firmly, "not for the first time." "Why not?" asked Lenny, genuinely puzzled that she was turning down a fortune at the same time she was asking him to get back into prostitution. "I won't try to explain it to you," said Kicky with a sigh. "Ever consider implants? You could make even more money by dancing here if you had some more rack on you and you didn't have so many tattoos," remarked Gillis with a leer. "Yeah, well, I don't and I do. Look, you want to set me up? Yes or not?" 50-50 split, 30 you, 70 me, said Gillis flatly. "Don't tell me you can't squeeze an extra cash tip out of a John." While the two of them were haggling, a nondescript older model Ford Explorer pulled up outside Jupiter's Den. It was a warm summer's day, and the SUV's two occupants had the windows rolled down. The driver was a tall and powerful man with a seamed boxer's face, a shaved head and goatee beard. The pro wrestler look wasn't Big Jim McCann's personal choice, since he was a master electrician by profession, but he needed to alter his appearance because his face was on a few too many wanted posters, websites, and television screens as of late. McCann was quartermaster of the NVA's 1st Portland Brigade. His passenger was Jesse Cat Eyes Lockhart, who, after much debate amounting to a passionate argument between Tommy Coyle and Zach Hatfield, had been transferred from D Company to 1st Brigade A Company and put on sniper duty in the big city. As reluctant as Zach had been to let him go, and as reluctant as Lockhart himself had been to leave his old friends and comrades in Clatsop County, the fact was that Cat was running out of major targets in D Company's area of operation, and he was too valuable a resource to waste out in the sticks plinking away at Mexican dock workers in the local Chamber of Commerce. In the short time he had been in Portland, the Jack of Diamonds had already bagged a city councilman, a U.S. Army colonel, the head of the African American Democratic Club, another FBI agent, and several police officers. His presence in the city was known, and he was driving the local politically correct establishment into hysterics. "You want me to go in with you?" asked Lockhart. "Nah," said McCann. "Gillis is a nervous little cuss, and he might get spooked if he sees somebody he don't know. I just need to find out from him where he's got the stuff stashed, and set up a pickup so we can get the gear and pay him. Then we need to get you to the Mayflower Hotel." It was time for Cat to change safe houses, and McCann had been the only transport available. McCann's phone beeped. He took it out of his pocket and flipped it open. "Yeah?" He listened for a few moments. "Okay." He closed the phone. "That was our escort vehicle. Van Gelder says there's a patrol coming down Sandy Boulevard, 2 units in an armored car. Unmarked, probably Portland Rapid Response, but maybe Batfay or FBI. They're cruising slow. The way they're coming, looks like they're going to turn onto 82nd in about a minute." "I don't think they're looking for us specifically," said Lockhart. "They've been doing that a lot lately, keeping goon squads on the street as rapid response teams, moving around, trying to cover the city so they can move in fast with a lot of firepower on any of our naughty shenanigans. Ace and me got chased by one of those crews last time out." "Yeah, well, I don't want them driving by and looking in here and recognizing you," said McCann. "You'd better come inside after all." Just hang back at the bar while I have my chat with Lenny, and then we'll move on after Van tells us they've passed." "The truck all clean and righteous?" asked Lockhart. "Yeah, it should be, but if it ain't, then that's another reason we don't need you sitting inside when they spot it." Lockhart was reluctant to leave his cased rifle and gear in the vehicle, but he knew that what McCann said made sense. They got out of the car. Cat checked to make sure his 9mm Beretta was firmly seated in the clip holster in the small of his back, under his denim jacket, and both men walked into the strip club. It was dark enough inside, so the opening of the door cast light into the building, and that made Gillis look up from his booth at the far end. "Hang on a minute," he told Kicky. "I got some business to take care of." He got up out of the booth. Kicky turned around and saw one of the men who looked like a wrestler or a biker walk forward to talk to Gillis. They met at the end of the bar nearest to where Kicky sat in the booth. The other one, a younger man, not unhandsome, stayed at the far end of the bar near the door. He calmly checked out the room in a single glance, moving his eyes over Kicky, categorizing her and moving on. Then he turned to the door, watching it. Reading men was a vital survival skill in Kicky's lines of work, both legitimate and otherwise, and with these two she immediately read muscle of some kind, heavy muscle. There was just something about the way they carried themselves, not with a criminal swagger or thuggish biker lope, but controlled and fast and efficient, no wasted motion. Both of them were wearing jeans and jackets in the summertime when everyone in Portland stripped down to shorts and tees, and Kicky would have bet a night's fare receipts there were guns beneath the jackets. There was something odd about the younger man at the far end, something teasingly familiar. She got up and went to the ladies' room, in a small corridor near the bar. After she finished, she quietly slipped down to the door of the men's room at the other end of the short hallway and studied the younger man in the long mirror behind the bar. The bartender brought him a diet soda in a can with a plastic cup, and when he turned to pour it, Kicky saw his face and profile clearly. "Damn," she thought, "I know him from somewhere. Who is he?" She ran over her long list of male personal and business acquaintances. No, not one of them. She rummaged through the past few years of her disorderly life. No, nothing. Was he on TV or something? Recognition suddenly slammed into her. "Jesus H. Christ," she whistled to herself. "It's him. That sniper every cop in Phoebe in the Northwest is looking for. Well, well, Lenny's coming up in the world, looks like. What the fuck kind of business is he doing with the Spuckies? Bet it's guns." The music from the speakers suddenly fell silent, and before the two men on the nearer end of the bar could lower their voices, she heard Lenny say 72nd. "And Prescott, tomorrow night at 9. "I'll find it," said the wrestler. They lowered their tones, but with a little strain Kicky could still pick up what they were saying. "Why not tonight?" "I'm entertaining some officers of the law here tonight," said Lenny. "I got to show them I'm living the life of a solid citizen, know what I mean? Seriously, I need to be here and schmooze these cops up, make sure they get properly wined and dined and laid, so they keeps their nose out of my little sidelines, including yours." Kicky knew the place referred to. It was an apartment in a seedy building that Lenny maintained as an office and home away from home for the many sidelines he had going that he didn't want around the club in the public eye. His girls sometimes paid him off there or used the place for tricks. She slipped back down the hall and exited on the ladies' room end, went back to the booth and sat down. It was dark, and after a minute or two she risked turning around. Lenny was on his way back to her. The big man with the goatee was putting his cell phone away. He nodded to his companion, and both of them left the building. When Lenny sat back down, Kicky didn't mention anything about his brief meeting. Lack of curiosity was another one of her world's survival skills, and if she made the slightest comment or inquiry, she knew that alarm bells would start clanging in what passed for Lenny Gillis's mind. But she wondered how she might use this new information that had fallen into her lap. After some more haggling, Lenny and Kicky reached a 60-40 split agreement whereby she would resume her old employment by working out of the club, at least at first. This wasn't quite as extortionate as it sounded, since Lenny paid off the cops, and his 60% commission covered a reasonably ironclad immunity from arrest. Kicky would report for duty at 10 that night, dressed to undress, and until she could work her old client list back up, she would take floor trade, club clients whom she chose herself, and turn the tricks at one of the cheap motels lining 82nd. Avenue, in this case the Wayside Inn, where Lenny had a special hourly deal with the Iranian manager for his girls. Kicky sighed and resigned herself to 6 months of driving a 12-hour shift in the cab 5 days a week, and 2, possibly 3 night shifts a week working out of the club. Her goal was to raise enough money to get out of Oregon by Christmas. She hoped to hell that It Takes a Village would hold off that long doing anything about Ellie. Maybe the Spuckies would shoot them before then, she thought hopefully. Kicky left the club and returned to her battered, single-wide mobile home in a rundown trailer park about 2 miles away. She didn't have a car of her own, the cab company wouldn't allow her to take her cab home, and the buses were full of Mexicans who always dirty-mouthed her in Spanish and pawed all over her, so she walked. She was so sick inside herself at what she was doing that it was all she could do to go home and not go out hunting the streets for some rock. But she knew full well that if she went back to the drugs as well as back to the sex trade, she would be dead or back in prison within a year, and her daughter would be scooped up by It Takes a Village like a barracuda snapping up a minnow. The prospect of committing sexual acts with drunken and usually unhygienic strange men, even white men, filled her with such disgust that she wanted to vomit, even at the thought, but she understood that she had reached the point in her life where her always limited range of choices had virtually disappeared. Kicky knew that America had one rule above all else: get money. It didn't matter how you did it, you got money, end of story, or else you ended up like the white-haired bagwomen Kicky saw pushing their possessions up and down 82nd Avenue and Sandy Boulevard in shopping carts. No welfare or affirmative action or diversity programs for poor white chicks. Poor white chicks either stole or put out, or they got left behind. If you had a white skin, you got money or you fell below the point of no return. Never mind all that crap you saw on TV. That lovely, diverse, racially mixed society where there was still a middle class and still material things and all was jolly. That was television. It wasn't real. 82nd Avenue was real, poverty was real, drugs were real. Guys and sometimes girls coming back dead and mangled from Iraq was real, and life was a concrete hell for a white single mother. Kicky didn't know which was worse, the prospect of losing her looks completely to the pipe and the endless minimum wage labor, or to time and disappointment, or else staying fairly attractive and sexy for a while. Both had their drawbacks, and brought a different set of problems. Kicky opened the trailer door and found her alcoholic mother sitting on the sofa staring at a soap opera on television, a long-necked beer bottle in her hand and a few empties on the coffee table in front of her. "Hi, Mom," she said. She got a grunt in return. McGee was a stooped, washed-out woman in her 50s, wearing a sloppy and shapeless dress, who looked like she was 70. Kicky knew she was incredibly lucky to have her mother still around to take care of Ellie. She had come to an arrangement with May, a 12-pack of cheap domestic beer per day of babysitting, plus whatever extra beer May could scrounge up herself from her own odd jobs and the scrawny military survivor's pension the U.S. government still paid her, at least intermittently. It was the only income she could ever expect since Social Security had failed a few years before. Administrative delays were making those military pension checks further and further between, as with all the remaining federal entitlements, at least where white people were concerned. Kicky hadn't been married to Ellie's father, and the Army had conveniently lost their joint statement of domestic partnership form, which anyway was supposed to be for gay couples only, so she'd never gotten a dime from the government. Aside from being a hopeless drunk, May wasn't a bad sort. She wasn't a mean drunk, inclining more to maudlin self-pity, but not too often. She never hurt or abused Ellie in any way. She let Ellie watch TV with her and listen to her chatter, didn't let her wander outside the trailer into the street. And she always made sure that the child got a mashed-up paper plate of dinner of some kind, at least some macaroni or tuna fish or whatever was in the house. She made sure the toddler had a clean diaper on before putting her in her crib for the night, then sitting down in front of the television and drinking until she passed out. Kicky had been raised the same way, and she had at least survived into adulthood. "Mom, I'm going to need you to stay over for tonight, and then maybe take Ellie back to your place for a while," said Kicky. "I'm going to be working a lot from now on. I'm going out tonight and won't be back until early." "You going back to whoring?" snorted the old lady. Kicky didn't attempt to evade the question. "I got to get money, Mom," she said simply. "I have to get Ellie out of Oregon, out of Child Protective Services reach. Otherwise they're going to take her and sell her to some rich bastards. I know she'd be better off with them. Better off than with me, you mean, grumbled the old lady. Better off than with either of us, said Kicky evenly. There's no point in denying the truth, Mom, but that's not going to happen. I'm not going to let them have her, as selfish as that is. She is mine. Those rich bastards and bitches have taken everything else, and what they haven't taken for themselves they've given to the goddamn niggers and Mexicans, but they're not taking Ellie. That's just the way it's going to be, and for that I have to get money. Just don't let it drive you back onto the crack this time, okay, honey? Pleaded the old lady, closing her eyes with a sigh. I won't, Mom, said Kicky, crossing her fingers and hoping she could keep to that. It would be hard. Mommy! Shouted a small golden-haired personage of 18 months, wearing nothing but a pamper, who galumphed into the room from the bedroom and hugged onto Kicky's leg. Up, she demanded. Up me. Hi, baby girl, said Kicky with a smile, picking up the child. Ooh, poo, baby made a boo-boo. You need a change. Come on, let's fix that. She snagged another pamper from the torn bag on the cracked Formica kitchen table and headed for the bathroom, trying not to think of what she would be doing later on. When Kicky came into Jupiter's den that night, the joint wasn't exactly jumping. That would come a bit later, around 1 in the morning. But the mindless cacophony of 1990 seconds retro rock was roaring through the huge speakers, and the silicone-enhanced dancers, naked except for a thong, were twirling around their poles. The drunken yahoos of all races were shouting their infantile comments and throwing money on the stage. The overpriced beer and the watered liquor was flowing from the bar in a river. Just like old home week, reflected Kicky sourly as she walked in the door. She was wearing short hot pants and gleaming vinyl boots with elevated although not quite high heels, a low-cut halter top with no bra, a wide leather belt, and carrying a shoulder bag purse containing such items as extra condom packs and sex toys. It also contained a canister of pepper spray in a special holster sleeve sewn unobtrusively but accessibly on the outside of the bag. Lenny had a hard and fast rule. His girls carried no guns or knives, because the legal problems involved in cutting or shooting a John or other bothersome person were beyond the limited range of his police clout to fix. Most of the girls had, in any case, reached the point where they'd rather be raped or robbed than get involved with the law to that extent, and the possibility of getting slashed up or strangled and dumped in a ditch was simply an occupational hazard. The pepper spray was for warding off non-paying drunks and handling customers who got sufficiently kinky to be dangerous. Inside the purse was Kicky's own specialty weapon, a long, sturdy white sock, into the toe of which was inserted a large, heavy, closed padlock wrapped in a nylon to keep it from ripping the sock. The result was a crude but effective slungshot with enough torque to be lethal if used with skill. Locks and socks was the standard method for settling differences between inmates in women's prison, and Kicky had become quite proficient at it. Kicky looked around for Lenny Gillis but couldn't see him anywhere on the floor. She shoved through a door marked employees only, well, she was kind of an employee now, and looked in his office, which was also empty. Kicky figured Lenny was probably in the can, and she was about to go back out onto the floor when she looked down the hall and saw the doorway into the back alley was open. There was noise. Someone was shouting. Kicky normally steered clear of anything remotely sounding like someone else's business, but she remembered the strange visit that afternoon of the two men whom she was certain were with the outlawed, NVA, and she was keen to find out something more about them and what they were doing with Lenny Gillis, something she could possibly turn to her advantage, pecuniary or otherwise. She slipped outside into the alley. The shouting was coming from just on the other side of a dumpster. Kicky crept up and peeked around the side of the receptacle. Lenny Gillis was being held up against the wall by a large, black, uniformed Portland police officer, who sported sergeant's stripes. Lenny was a small man and the cop was big, much bigger and thicker. Lenny's feet were off the ground. Facing him was an even bigger and even blacker man in plain clothes, a sharply tailored suit and tie ensemble with shoes so highly polished they gleamed like patent leather. This man wore a short-cut afro and a neatly trimmed Lion of Judah-style goatee beard and mustache, and the rings on his fingers glinted beneath the streetlight with gold and diamonds. Shit, thought Kicky to herself in shock. It's the monkey. Like any street girl, she had immediately recognized Detective Sergeant Jamal Jarvis of the Portland Police Bureau's Hate Crime and Civil Disobedience Squad, the feared police unit that constituted the muscle arm of Portland's ultra-liberal and politically correct establishment. Jarvis had been vice and narcotics before he was bumped up to H&CD, and during his years there, he had cut a swath of terror and corruption through the local underworld that was legendary even by Portland's notoriously sleazy standards. Every hooker of any color and every street dealer who so much as sold a couple of joints knew Jarvis and either paid out to him or ended up in jail with broken bones or worse. Kicky had always avoided Jarvis like the plague, and one additional reason that she had broken with Lenny Gillis 6 months previously, besides Lenny's little multiracial surprise party, was that she had spotted Jarvis hanging around Jupiter's den, and Jarvis had spotted her. The word on the street was clear and unambiguous. Black, Mexican, and Asian hookers paid Jarvis off in money, or sometimes in drugs, but white girls paid in trade. Kicky was not the only white working girl who still retained some vestige of decency and personal standards, and the fate of those who refused or evaded Jarvis's demands was not encouraging. Such bigoted ladies of the evening tended to end up facing bogus charges and many years in prison, or getting a coffee cup full of acid in the face, or in some cases their dead and violated bodies were found floating in the Columbia River or jammed into a culvert. No one cared much about a few dead white skanks here and there, but there had eventually been such a rash of that kind of thing that even the politically correct Portland Police Bureau realized that they had to do something to avoid embarrassment, and Jarvis had been transferred from his congenial job of keeping prostitutes and drug dealers in line to the even more congenial one of keeping insolent white boys in line. It would appear that Jarvis had at least kept his hand in on some of his previous sidelines. The ongoing discussion in the alleyway behind the dumpster appeared to have something to do with Lenny's arrears on his protection money or some other kind of split from his petty rackets. "I got 1,000 coming from you, motherfucker," snarled the uniformed sergeant. Jarvis was in the process of assaulting Lenny with a heavy, flat, leather-wrapped implement about a foot long, known in police circles as a slapjack. It was just as heavy and painful, but the flat surface left less telltale bruising than a traditional blackjack. "What you gonna do, Lenny?" Jarvis droned on, slapping Gillis's head back and forth with a cosh, each blow a dull and sickening thud that sprayed blood from Gillis's mutilated and bleeding face, his broken nose and bleeding eyes. "What you gonna do, Lenny? Gib Roscoe his money, fucking cracker, gib Roscoe his money." "I haven't got it," screamed Lenny hysterically. "I can get it Friday. I can get it Friday. Jesus God." "Friday ain't today, motherfucker," rumbled Roscoe. "Gimme my props, motherfucker. Gimme my 1,000. What you gonna do, Lenny? What you gonna do? Cracker motherfucker, you gib Roscoe his money," chanted Jarvis, battering Lenny's head back and forth with the slapjack. "You don't give Roscoe his money, Roscoe don't give me my money. I get pissed off when shitty little crackers don't pay day props. You think you can fuck the brothers, Lenny? You can't fuck no brothers? You skinny little cracker ass can't even fuck you on skank hose. What you gonna do, Lenny?" The slapjack rose and fell in rhythm, each blow mercilessly hard on Lenny's face and skull. Kicky realized with horror that Jarvis was high, on drugs and on shedding white blood. He didn't really care about the money, he just liked to beat white boys. She also realized that Lenny had suddenly stopped screaming. So did Roscoe, who let the limp body of Lenny slip down into a sitting position against the dripping alley wall. Gillis's head lolled, loose and rolling. His face and eyes were bubbling blood and could not be seen beneath the crimson mask. Roscoe leaned over and felt for Lenny's throat in the mass of goo, then pulled back his hand and wiped it on Gillis's trousers. He spoke in a disgusted voice. "Fuck Jamal de Mutafuka dead. That'll make him pay, won't it? And it seems that death was quite a surprise to his ass," said Jarvis, throwing back his head and roaring in mindless laughter. "Didn't think you was ever gonna die, did ya, cracker? Aw shit, Jamal, you a fool," yelled Roscoe angrily. "We was taking $1,000 a month off this Ofe motherfucker." "No problem, dog. So we take $1,000 a month off the next motherfucker who takes over the den," said Jamal. "Now I gots to call in dis stiff, and we gots to investigate and pretend somebody gives a fuck about what happens to white trash like dis." muttered Roscoe aggrievedly. "So he finds us another piece of white trash to pin it on," said Jarvis carelessly. In her hiding place behind the piled cardboard boxes of trash, Kicky McGee suddenly realized her own deadly peril. She tried to back away quietly, and needless to say she managed to back into another stack of piled boxes and knock it over, the glass and cans and junk inside cascading into the alley floor with a clatter. Jarvis and Roscoe were calloused and brutal men, but their animal instincts were sharp, and when need arose they could both move fast. They were on her before she could get 10 feet down the alley in her sprint for the door. Jarvis tackled her and brought her down to the ground, while Roscoe launched a kick to her ribs that seemed to explode her whole body with fire. She managed to get her loaded sock out of her purse and get in one good thwack at Roscoe's ankle as it sliced in toward her a second time. He screamed in pain. Jarvis pinned Kicky's arms with his knees and raised the slapjack to crush her skull as she lay beneath him. But Roscoe wasn't so out of it that he wasn't able to grab Jarvis's arm. "No, fool, you done enough of dat shit for one night. Don't you get it? You done nabbed the killer of Mr. Lenny Gillis." Roscoe picked up the sock with the lock in it. "Stupid bitch even done provided her own murder weapon." Roscoe hobbled over to Lenny's body and took a couple of good swings at the battered head, making sure the sock got good and bloody. "Congratulations, Sarge," he called out, laughing. "You just done cleared a homicide in record time." He pulled the radio out of his belt and spoke into it in urgent, clear English. 2-4 dispatch, this is 1 Bravo 9. We have a 187 in the alley behind Jupiter's Den, 40,400 block of 82nd Avenue. Suspect in custody. Roger 19 Bravo, came a female voice over the radio. Units and me responding. Do you need an RRT? Negative, incident not connected with domestic terrorism, replied Roscoe. Just a pimp that got his skull beaten in by one of his prossies. Kicky screamed like an animal in its death agony and tried to fight, tried to throw the huge Negro off her and run. He balled up his fist and slugged her in the jaw, crashing her head back onto the concrete floor of the alley and knocking her unconscious. Kicky was still unconscious when they brought her in. She didn't even know for sure where she was. It might have been some station house, but most likely she was somewhere in the bowels of the downtown Portland Justice Center on Pioneer Courthouse Square. Originally built as a modish complex of brick, glass, and concrete to adorn a stylish and politically correct power structure, decorated with murals and sculptures by trendy Portland artists, the Justice Center had taken on a much more grim and stark appearance and function since the Coeur d'Alene Rebellion had broken out the previous autumn. Other areas had been slow to realize the danger and had accordingly suffered courthouses and police stations burned, bombed, and invaded by the NVA, who sometimes torched big stacks of legal and law enforcement papers and records on rural courthouse lawns. Not Portland. The multi-structured complex of the Justice Center's several buildings containing the courtrooms, both state and federal, offices, and the headquarters of the Portland Police Bureau, had immediately been transformed at great taxpayers' expense into a fully fortified and secured green zone, based on plans drawn up by consultants from Israel and the United Kingdom, who had prior experience in erecting such places in the West Bank and Northern Ireland, respectively. Surrounding buildings and businesses had been seized by special eminent domain acts of the state legislature and city council, then bulldozed and cleared away to allow for the erection of an encircling rampart of Bremer walls topped with razor wire and surveilled with closed-circuit television cameras. The concrete perimeter had been expanded to take in the federal courthouse as well as the state and local occupants, and the Justice Center now sat like a blistering scar in the middle of downtown. Entrance and exit to the green zone were strictly controlled through electronically activated gates at sandbag-reinforced checkpoints. All vehicles were logged in and out and inspected coming and going, and anyone not wearing the correct ID badge inside the complex was liable to immediate arrest or, in some areas, shooting on sight. There had in fact been several unfortunate incidents due to white employees misplacing their badges. The streets approaching the Justice Center were blocked with rolls of razor wire and patrolled by black-jacketed, automatic weapons-toting SWAT teams and dogs, on the alert for car bombers or anyone with a pale skin who didn't seem to belong. But the center had become a place of fear and nightmare, not just in its outward appearance. Inside were the headquarters not just of the police, but of the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. These agencies had considered their pre-10-20 seconds offices too exposed, and they had taken over a large portion of the administrative floors of the federal courthouse and sealed it off. There were rumors of excavations being done in secret by specially imported construction crews of Asian and Mexican laborers, as more offices, soundproofed interrogation cells, and holding cells were dug deep beneath the complex. Then there were the stories of the torture chambers deep beneath the earth or high in windowless rooms, padded to muffle the screams. The Portland Police Bureau occasionally issued pro forma denials that white prisoners suspected of security or terrorist-related offenses were being abused in the Justice Center. The FBI and DHS, on the other hand, frankly admitted it and pointed out that torture in federal custody had been legal since the Patriot Act, so long as the Dershowitz protocols were followed and only Muslims or alleged white racists were abused. It was known that more white prisoners entered the Justice Center than ever emerged. What happened to them no one knew, but it was rumored that there was a covert crematorium in one of the walled-off courtyards of the complex. The Justice Center cast a long shadow over the city of Portland, a warning to any who might dare think of rebelling against the United States, and a source of anger and hatred that glowed secretly in the recesses of men's hearts and minds, burning steadily brighter as time went on and more white people's family members disappeared into the green zone. Kicky now sat shackled to a chair in one of the interrogation rooms. They had already taken away her clothes and dressed her in the orange jumpsuit of American shame and humiliation. She knew she would probably never wear ordinary clothing again. They hadn't allowed her to see a doctor. Her head and her ribs still hurt terribly where she had been kicked and punched, and her ribcage was swollen and tender, but nothing felt broken, and they'd at least given her a wad of paper napkins and let her go into a restroom to wash the dripping wound in the back of her head, where Jarvis had knocked it into the concrete. It had finally stopped bleeding, and now her hair was stiff with dried blood while it scabbed over. They had brought her here to this room and chained her to an iron rail running along the floor, her hands manacled together in front of her. The female Mexican guard had simply pointed to a plastic chamber pot in one corner with a roll of toilet paper sitting on the floor beside it, and walked out the door. That had been hours ago. There was no clock, so she didn't know how long she'd been there. There was a long mirror running half the length of the opposite wall and a closed-circuit TV. Camera with a glowing little red light on it hanging from one wall. Kicky had no way of knowing if anyone was behind the two-way mirror or who was watching her on the TV monitor. She simply sat at the table and stared into space, the physical pain of her beating slowly giving way to utter black horror as the full weight of her situation bore down into her consciousness. It was all gone. She was white, she was poor, and everything she knew from her very birth told her that no one on earth would lift a finger to help her. She had always held the bitter belief that she had nothing, but now that it was all gone, she understood how much she'd really had before, the trailer where she could at least lay down her head at night alone if she chose, the sad, drunken woman who had borne her but at least had not left her, and above all the little golden child she would never see again except maybe through the glass on visiting day. This couldn't be happening. It was surely a nightmare. She had them sometimes. Surely she would wake up soon. She closed her eyes and desperately willed herself to wake up. But when she opened her eyes, she was still in the god-awful puce green room with the cloying and overpowering smell of fresh paint, a smell that was making her sick. She leaned off the chair and suddenly retched again and again, uncontrollably, dry-heaving because she had nothing to bring up, vomiting hysterically in sheer terror and mindless anguish. Outside, behind the two-way mirror, although Kicky could hear nothing through the soundproofed walls, Jamal Jarvis was having a spirited discussion with his partner, Detective Sergeant Elena Martinez. Lenny Martinez was the Mami half of the Portland detective team commonly known as the Mami and the Monkey. She was a tall, slim, 30-something woman with clear olive skin, straight black hair, brown eyes, and a figure that looked fine indeed in a bathing suit, and turned many heads, both male and lesbian, in the indoor swimming pool in the police gym, where she worked out every couple of days and swam 50 laps afterward. Outside the gym, Lenny was the Bureau's fashion plate, her skirt and jacket business suits and her pantsuits for fieldwork invariably expensive, coordinated and flawlessly chic. Her shoes were Gucci and her watch one of several lady Rolexes presented her by a series of highly placed lovers, mostly in the legal system somewhere but none in the PB, some of them married, all of them white. She was unmarried, consummately professional, all business and all career. Unlike her quondam FBI counterpart, the late and rather unlamented Rabong Miller, Lenny was actually respected, if not liked, by her superiors and her fellow officers in the PB for her competence and her occasionally brilliant detective work. No one remembered ever having seen her smile. She wasn't smiling now. Oh, for God's sake, Jamal, how many of these messes do you think you can get away with making until Internal Affairs has finally had enough? She snapped. Hey, it ain't my fault a white boy's candy ass is so fucking fragile he can't take a little beatdown, muttered Jarvis defensively. Look, I know how the game is played, said Lenny in irritation. Until police salaries come up to something commensurate with the work we do and the risks we take, especially now with a bunch of racist crazies gunning for us every time we step outside the door, then every officer with any initiative is going to have something going on the side. I have my little sidelines like selling information to reporters and PIs and fiddling the odd background check, clearing some pale-faced bozo for employment when our records show he went to an Aryan Nations meeting 20 years ago, petty shit like that. You have yours. But this thing with Gillis is way out of line. If it goes bad and IA takes you down, or worse yet the media gets hold of it, I'm going to get some of the splatter. You can fuck up your own career if you want, but now you're putting mine at risk, damn it. It ain't gonna go bad, protested Jarvis. I tell you, me and Roscoe between us got this white-hole locked down already. Hell, both of us saw the bitch wailin' on poor Mr. Gillis with our own eyes. Of course you did, said Lenny, rolling her eyes. A Mexican uniformed officer came down the hall toward them, holding a larger manila file folder and handed it to Jarvis. Hey Jamal, here's the file on your puta blanca with the tattoos in there, he said. Looking good, my man. Seems Lenny Gillis filed a complaint with us a few months back when she assaulted him, hit him in the head with a beer bottle. He dropped the charges, but it's on record. She's got priors for solicitation and holding, and she did 14 months in Coffee Creek on a 2 to 5 for larceny and possession of stolen goods. Only 14 months? Asked Lenny curiously. She had a baby while she was inside, and she and her mother played the sad violins for the parole board. Poor little trailer trash girl. New baby. Baby's daddy killed in Iraq. Brother killed in Iraq. Inmate sole support of aged parent. Yada yada yada. Overcrowding was even worse than usual that month, so they sprung her, explained the officer carefully. He had once made the mistake of addressing Sergeant Martinez in Spanish with a flippant hola, Mami, and had almost found himself hauled up on sexual harassment charges. Lenny was thoroughly Americanized, and she spoke Spanish only on these occasions when it was required in the line of work. Her one secret neurosis and obsession, not even admitted to the bureau shrink during her periodic required evaluations, was that she wanted more than anything else to be white. Not just any white. Elena Martinez dreamed of herself as Nordic white with creamy skin and golden hair, like the girl in the interrogation room, only without the tattoos. Her unconscious longing had long ago sublimated itself into an almost insane hatred of white people in general, white racialists in particular, and blonde white women even more particularly. She was intelligent enough to realize she needed to control this inner demon, at least in public, and she almost always succeeded. And yet she would take only white men into her bed. In her entire life, she had never slept with either a black man or a Latino or another woman of any race. Jamal Jarvis was sharp enough to realize that Lenny was smarter than he was, and he sensed that hers were good coattails for him to ride on, so he generally acted as the brawn of the team while she was the brains. It worked surprisingly well, and their high clearance rate and general rep for getting results in the form of confessions from suspected racists and other thought criminals had done them both good, departmentally speaking. But Jarvis sensed that Lenny was what the Hispanics referred to as a coconut, brown on the outside and white on the inside. The rumor mill had informed him that they both shared the same preference for Caucasian sexual partners of the opposite gender, and he knew that she had heard the same about him. With a crude and vicious sense of humor, he had taken her down a peg very subtly, by refusing at any time in their acquaintance to try hitting on her. This not only deprived her of the pleasure of shooting Jarvis down, but let Lenny know that he did not consider her white. It was the ultimate insult, and it bugged the hell out of her. "I needs to get a statement from her is all," said Jarvis after the Mexican uniformed officer departed. "Just something to put in the file. Also be good to make damn sure she understands just where the hell she is." Lenny was reading over Kicky's file. "Shouldn't be too hard," she said. "It says here that the daughter, one Mary Ellen McGee, aged 18 months, is a child deemed to be at risk and therefore of interest to it takes a village. We know the kid's going to end up there anyway, but the illustrated slut in there doesn't, at least not for sure, so we can use that as leverage. Blonde baby girl, no less." "Healthy?" asked Jarvis, his interest piqued. "According to this, yes. Not born with AIDS or fetal alcohol syndrome or any STDs. Nothing of the kind you'd expect from a trailer trash mom." "Hey, little blonde girl, sky's the limit on day adoption bond," said Jarvis. "I'll need to get the case number and see if a caseworker's been assigned," said Lenny, ruminating. "If there's no caseworker, then I'll bet we can cut at least a 20% commission depending on the judge. He or she will be getting a cut too, so he or she will award the child to the highest bidder. And if between the three of us we can't get $500,000 for her from some rich yuppie couple, we'd all better find another line of work. 20% of $500,000? That's $100,000, $50,000 each. Not too shabby for beating down a cheap crack-a-pimp," chuckled Jarvis, pleased. "See, I told you it would turn out righteous. Now let me go in and get her confession." "I think we'd both better go in, Jamal," said Martinez, "just to make sure you restrain your habit of getting frisky with female inmates of the pale-skinned persuasion. I think this is one case where somebody needs to make sure you keep your fly zipped. Besides, I need to protect my investment." "Fine," said Jarvis with a shrug. He realized that this one could become ticklish if the girl couldn't be persuaded to keep her mouth shut about what she'd seen, play along, and cop a plea. Kicky looked up as the door opened, and the two detectives entered the room. Jarvis had a thick file in his hand that she presumed were her yellow sheets. She looked at Lenny, Levantine sleek and arrogant, and dressed to the nines in a blue serge skirt and jacket like some kind of model in the lady cop chic section of Vogue. She knew full well that any faint hope she had of ever getting out of this depended on her crawling and groveling like a whipped dog to these two, and yet something in her that she didn't understand seemed to take on a perverse life of its own. "I see the monkey, so I guess you must be the Mami," she snarled at them. Martinez leaned over the table, and like lightning she lashed out in a vicious slap across Kicky's face, almost knocking her out of the chair. Inmates in this justice center are prohibited from using racial or ethnic slurs, derogatory references to anyone based on race or sexual preference or national origin, or other hateful language, Ms. McGee, she said. "It's not only a violation of JC regulations, it's a violation of the hate speech section of the Penal Code. If you do so again, you will be charged with felony hate speech in addition to first-degree murder. I suggest you take heed. You're in trouble enough. Watch yo' move, bitch," added Jarvis. Martinez took the file and slammed it onto the desk in front of Kicky. "We've got you cold. Your previous assault on your pimp with a blunt instrument is the icing on the cake. You're gone, girl. I'm offering you one chance for a deal, one only. You will plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter in the death of Lenny Gillis, and I can arrange it with the DA so you get 12 to 20. As an added sweetener, since I'm feeling generous this morning, I can arrange for you to serve your sentence in a medium security facility so you won't have to go back to Coffee Creek. This is as good as it's going to get, Kristin. Take it or leave it." "They call me Kicky," said the girl sullenly. "Of course they do," sighed Martinez. "Don't I get a lawyer?" she demanded. "Technically speaking, since 9/11 the state no longer has to provide you with one, depending on whether we want to file this as a security case under the Patriot Act, but in Portland the powers that be do like to keep up appearances. So yes, if you want, I can get you a legal aid attorney," explained Lenny. "Any such attorney will almost certainly be black, Hispanic, Jewish, gay, female, or some combination of the above, and probably will hold as little brief for white trailer trash crack whores like you as I do, and they will advise you to take the deal I'm offering. But if you put me to that much trouble and delay, I might downgrade the offer to 20 to 5 years. The DA doesn't want to be bothered with petty crap like this, and she'll follow whatever recommendation I make, and Judge Feinstein will follow whatever recommendation she makes. Kristin, you know as well as I do you're fucked. Play ball and make it easy on yourself. I suppose the fact that I didn't kill Lenny doesn't have a damned thing to do with anything? Kicky demanded bitterly. No, of course it doesn't, responded Lenny with another sigh. What about justice? Cried Kicky. This is a legal matter. Justice has nothing to do with it, explained Lenny irritably, irked at the girl's stubborn stupidity. I can't believe you've been on the streets as long as you have, and you still don't know how it works. Yeah, I know how it works. Maybe I can give you something, suggested Kicky tentatively. I mean, I know all kinds of stuff about Lenny's scams and the shit he was doing at the den, so do we. And what are we supposed to do with it? Asked Lenny in exasperation. Arrest and indict a dead man? Who gives a damn about prostitution and drugs anyway? They're the basis of most urban economies these days. Come on, Kristin, yes or no? In view of the, special circumstances surrounding this case, I can arrange for a quick arraignment in front of Judge Feinstein tomorrow sometime. Maybe even tonight. Plead guilty like a good girl and take your 12 to 20, and when you get out, you'll still be young enough to have some kind of a life yet. Kicky's self-control finally snapped. No, she screamed in uncontrollable rage. Fuck you, fuck both of you. I didn't do anything, goddamn you both to hell. I didn't do anything. I didn't kill Lenny, that nigger standing there did. You know it. I didn't do anything. Martinez stood up and slapped Kicky across the face again, but more or less pro forma, without anger or enthusiasm. Suit yourself, you stupid little twist, she said in disgust. Don't you ever say I didn't try and help you. First-degree murder and a life sentence it is. I suggest you watch your language in Judge Feinstein's court. He's not going to believe any wild stories you come up with about a respected and decorated police officer killing your pimp, and if you keep on using racial slurs and try to offer perjured testimony against an African-American officer, you need to remember that hate crime carries life without parole. So go ahead, jump up in court and yell out your stupid lies and really fuck yourself over forever. Hell, maybe it's for the best. Wealthy and decent couples all over the USA are going to be lining up around the block for that little girl of yours. Maybe you're doing the right thing after all by permanently taking yourself out of the picture. She and Jarvis turned and opened the door to leave. Kicky stared in horror. She knew that the door wasn't just closing on the interrogation room. It was closing on her whole life, on her daughter. They were going to take Ellie now. She had lost. They were going to take Ellie. As the door closed, Kicky jumped up and screamed at the top of her lungs, I can give you the NVA. Fucking spick, bitch, you hear me? I can give you NVA. I know where they are. I can give you that sniper, that guy they call the cat. I can give you too the NVA, you bitch, you baboon. Just let me go. Please, God, I didn't do anything. Please let me go. Please don't take my baby. She collapsed onto the tabletop, weeping hysterically. The door opened.